Welcome to The Midnight Secrets. The Midnight Lurker. In the small, sleepy town of Riverton, life was as predictable as the seasons. Everyone knew everyone, and nothing much ever happened, until the legend of the Midnight Lurker began to spread like wildfire. It started with whispers among the elderly, who spoke of a time when the town was new, and a traveling circus had come through. The star of the show was a clown named Grimaldi, whose painted face and exaggerated features could either make you laugh or shiver in fear. One day, a tragic accident during one of the performances claimed the lives of several children, and the circus quickly packed up and left town. But Grimaldi never left. He was buried in the town's cemetery, his grave unmarked and forgotten. Yet, the townsfolk believed that his spirit lingered, cursed to roam the streets after midnight. For decades, sightings of the Midnight Lurker were rare, but they always occurred after a child went missing. The few who claimed to have seen him described a tall figure dressed in a tattered clown costume, his face smeared with faded paint, and a grin so wide it seemed to split his face in two. His eyes were the most terrifying, cold, empty, and filled with a darkness that seemed to swallow the light around him. In recent years, the legend had become a favorite among the town's teenagers, who would dare each other to stay out past midnight to see if the lurker would appear. Most dismissed it as just a scary story, but there were always a few who weren't so sure. One summer night, a group of 5 friends, Jason, Emily, Mark, Sarah, and Tom, decided to put the legend to the test. They gathered at the old playground near the cemetery, each one pretending not to be scared, though the air was thick with tension. They laughed and joked, but as the clock in the town square began to chime 12 times, their laughter faded into silence. The night was eerily still, and the only sound was the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, they heard it, the faint jingle of bells. The friends froze, their eyes scanning the shadows. Jason, the bravest of the group, tried to brush it off as a stray cat or a prank, but the sound grew louder, closer. The air around them felt heavy, oppressive, as if something unseen was drawing nearer. Suddenly, Mark pointed towards the cemetery, his hand shaking. "Look," he whispered, his voice trembling. The others followed his gaze and saw a figure slowly emerging from behind the gravestones. It was tall, with a hunched posture, and it wore a dirty, faded clown suit. The moonlight glinted off its painted face, revealing a grotesque smile that sent chills down their spines. "Run!" Jason shouted, and they all bolted in different directions. But no matter how fast they ran, the lurker was always right behind them, moving with an unnatural speed. Sarah tripped and fell, screaming for help as the lurker loomed over her, his hand reaching out with long, skeletal fingers. In the morning, the townspeople found Sarah's shoes and a trail of small, pale footprints leading back to the cemetery, but Sarah was never seen again. The remaining friends were never the same after that night. They spoke little of what happened, but their haunted eyes told a story of unspeakable terror. The legend of the Midnight Lurker grew, and no one in Riverton dared venture out after midnight, especially not near the old cemetery. The birthday visitor. Emily's 10th birthday was supposed to be the best day of her life. Her parents had gone all out, there were decorations, a big cake with her favorite cartoon characters, and all her friends were invited. But the highlight of the day was meant to be Jolly Jack, the clown her parents had hired to entertain the kids. Jack arrived early, his old van sputtering into the driveway with a cloud of exhaust. Emily's mother welcomed him with a smile, though she couldn't help but notice how shabby his costume looked up close. The fabric was worn and frayed at the edges, and the bright colors were faded. But Jack was cheerful, his face painted in bright, exaggerated colors, and his smile wide, too wide, Emily thought, as if it were stuck on his face. The party started off well enough. Jolly Jack made balloon animals, performed magic tricks, and led the kids in games. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Every time she glanced at Jack, he was watching her, his eyes following her every move. When she tried to avoid his gaze, she found herself catching glimpses of him out of the corner of her eye, always looking, always smiling. As the afternoon wore on, the children grew tired, and the party began to wind down. Emily's friends were picked up by their parents one by one until only she and her family remained. Jack lingered, his smile never faltering as he helped clean up the yard. When Emily's mother handed him his payment, he took it with a low, almost sinister chuckle. "Thank you for inviting me," Jack said, his voice deep and raspy. "I had so much fun. And Emily. I'll see you again soon." Emily shivered at his words, but her parents dismissed it as part of the act. They waved Jack off as he climbed into his van and drove away, the vehicle disappearing down the street. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Jack, about his eyes that seemed to bore into her soul, about the way he had watched her all day. When she finally drifted off, she was awakened by a soft rustling sound outside her window. At first, she thought it was just the wind, but the sound grew louder, closer. With her heart pounding in her chest, Emily slowly got out of bed and crept to the window. She hesitated, then pulled the curtains aside. There, standing in the moonlit yard, was Jolly Jack. His costume was even more tattered now, his makeup smeared and his smile grotesquely wide. He was holding a balloon, which he released into the air as soon as he saw her. The balloon floated up, its string tangled in the branches of a tree, and Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Jack waved slowly, his hand moving in a deliberate, almost mocking manner, before turning and disappearing into the shadows. Terrified, Emily ran to her parents' room, but when they returned to her window, Jack was gone. They searched the yard and the neighborhood, but there was no sign of the clown. The next morning, Emily's parents tried to reassure her that it had all been a bad dream, but Emily knew better. That night, Emily's father found a note tucked under her pillow. It was written in large, looping letters, "Thanks for the fun. I'll be back." He dismissed it as a prank, perhaps one of the other children had left it, but Emily's fear only grew. Over the next few days, Emily became withdrawn, refusing to go outside or play with her friends. She told her parents that she saw Jack everywhere, in the park, outside her school, even in the grocery store. But each time they looked, there was no one there. Then, one night, Emily's parents went to check on her before bed and found her room empty. The window was open, the curtains fluttering in the breeze, and on her bed was a single balloon. Despite a frantic search that lasted for weeks, Emily was never found. The only clue was that balloon, which her mother kept, hoping that one day it might lead her to the truth. But Jolly Jack was never seen again. Some say he was just a drifter, a madman who preyed on children. Others believe he was something far more sinister, a dark force that took pleasure in the fear of the innocent. But whatever the truth, Emily's disappearance became the stuff of local legend, a warning to all parents to be wary of strangers, no matter how cheerful they seem. The Abandoned Circus. In the 1960s, the traveling Macabre Brothers Circus was famous for its bizarre and sometimes disturbing acts. It wasn't the kind of circus you took your children to for a day of fun and laughter. It was a circus shrouded in mystery, filled with freakish performers and acts that pushed the boundaries of good taste. The star of the show was Pierrot, a clown unlike any other. His costume was a tattered harlequin suit, his face painted in white with deep black eyes and a red, twisted mouth that seemed to scream rather than smile. Pierrot was known for his unsettling performances, his jokes were dark, his magic tricks often ended in gasps rather than applause, and there were rumors that some of the animals in the circus had met a gruesome end at his hands. The circus traveled from town to town, but it was always met with protests and outrage wherever it went. Then, one night, during a performance in a small town, disaster struck. A fire broke out in the big top, spreading rapidly through the tents and wagons. The flames consumed everything in their path, and by the time the fire was extinguished, the circus was nothing but ashes. Most of the performers escaped, but Pierrot was never found. Some said he had perished in the fire, while others believed he had simply vanished into the night. The charred remains of the circus were left untouched, a grim reminder of the tragedy. Over time, the site became overgrown with weeds, and the town slowly forgot about the circus that had once brought so much fear and discomfort. But those who lived near the old grounds claimed they could hear strange noises at night, faint music, laughter that was more like a cry, and the distant sound of bells. In the early 2000s, a group of urban explorers heard about the abandoned circus and decided to investigate. The site was located deep in the woods, hidden from view by thick underbrush and towering trees. The group consisted of 5 people: Liam, a photographer; Mia, a writer; Jake, historian; and 2 of their friends, Eric and Lisa, who were simply looking for a thrill. They arrived at the site just as the sun was beginning to set, the sky painted in hues of orange and purple. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. As they pushed their way through the underbrush, they finally came upon the remains of the circus. The old big top was nothing more than a skeletal frame, its canvas long gone, and the other tents were collapsed and rotting. Liam started taking pictures, documenting the eerie, forgotten place. Mia scribbled notes, her mind racing with ideas for her next story. But as they ventured deeper into the circus grounds, a sense of unease began to creep over them. The air grew colder, and they could all feel something watching them, though they saw nothing but shadows. They came across what had once been the clown's tent. Inside, they found old, tattered costumes, makeup containers filled with dried paint, and a large, cracked mirror that reflected nothing but darkness. It was then that they noticed a figure sitting in the far corner of the tent, its back turned to them. "Hello," Jake called out, his voice trembling slightly. The figure didn't move. Liam stepped forward, his camera ready, and snapped a photo. The flash illuminated the figure, a clown, dressed in a filthy, torn harlequin suit. Its face was pale, the paint cracked and peeling, but what stood out most were its eyes, empty sockets staring back at them through the lens. Before they could react, the clown slowly stood up. It turned to face them, its head cocked to one side as if examining them. The group froze, paralyzed by fear. The clown's mouth twisted into a grotesque smile, and then it spoke, its voice a low, guttural whisper. "You came to join the show." Panic set in, and the group bolted from the tent, running blindly through the woods. But the clown was behind them, moving with an unnatural speed, its laughter echoing through the trees. One by one, they stumbled and fell, and each time they looked back, the clown was closer. Eric was the first to disappear, dragged into the shadows by unseen hands. Lisa followed, her screams cut short as she was pulled into the darkness. Mia and Jake tried to stick together, but they were soon separated in the chaos. Mia tripped and fell, and when she looked up, the clown was standing over her, its smile wider than ever. Liam was the only one who made it out, barely able to speak when he stumbled into the nearest town. He babbled incoherently about the clown, the empty eyes, the laughter that wouldn't stop. The police searched the woods but found nothing, no sign of his friends, no evidence of the circus, nothing but the trees and the silence. Liam never recovered from that night. He spent the rest of his days in a psychiatric facility, haunted by the images of that clown. The site of the old Macabre Brothers circus was declared cursed, and no one dared venture into those woods again. But sometimes, on quiet nights, the townsfolk say you can still hear the faint sound of circus music drifting through the trees, accompanied by the soft, mocking laughter of a clown who never left.